My next guest is a friend of mine, a friend of the show. He's helped me with the ringing in my ear. He's a dentist who studied microbiology. Please welcome to the program Dr. Eddie Simon. Dr. Simon, thank you so much for taking the time. I appreciate it.
Hi, Larry. How are you?
I'm good, Doctor. We were talking this morning about how this disease is transmitted, and you were giving me all sorts of advice. And I said, why don't you come on the show and talk about it and give everybody else the same advice? Dr. Simon, tell us about how easy it is to contract coronavirus.
Well, it's very easy. These days, we're sitting at home, and, I call my friends like yourself. People call me. They have a lot of questions. So when you and I talked, it's great that we get to share some of this information with the public. Now, what we need to understand about this, we're going to talk about mitigation. So what's going on in the media right now, everybody has been informed to keep a social distance of 6 feet. That's great. And we have been told not to touch certain surfaces and use disinfectants as much as possible. But certain people don't understand the concept of cross-contamination. So let's take it one step further. We are outside and we're going to go home. What is it that we are bringing home with us? Let's use an example I used this morning. Some people are going to the supermarket these days, and they are trying to, I guess, protect themselves in a way. They're wearing gloves and a mask. And in going to the supermarket, people go in there, they touch various items, whether it's produce, plastic containers, or whatever it is, and they go to the cash register to pay, and they reach in their purse with the same gloves, take their credit card out, punch in their WANS number or whatever it is into the system to get the discount. All of that is going on while these gloves are still on. And then they're going to exit the supermarket, go to their car, still don't take the gloves off, and now put their hands on the steering wheel and then go home. I don't know at which point these gloves are coming off, but can you understand how much cross-contamination we just had?
Mm-hmm.
We don't know what this person, where she came from. We don't know where she had been before. We don't know the people in the supermarket that touched those items prior to her, where they have been. These are things we need to be careful about. Now, gloves, it's great to use them, but at some point in time, we have to discard the glove and do that properly, because that glove could have picked up, a myriad of organisms there. Now, what we're going to do here is when we get home, if we have gloves on, we are going to get a bag, a plastic bag, perhaps a Ziploc bag. We don't even want to take that home with us. Or when we get to the car, before we get out of the supermarket, we're going to put that glove in there, and we're going to seal it, and we're going to discard of it properly. Now, as far as cross-contamination in other areas, let's talk about our clothing items, for example. We can be going out, and we're keeping a social distance. Let's say we're going to the park, and somebody prior to us might have been sitting on the bench that we sat on, and if they sneezed on that bench, for example, well, on certain surfaces, these viruses sit for long periods of time. Let me just give you some examples. We're talking about, let's say, plastic. We're thinking about a 72-hour lifespan of this virus. Well, what is made of plastic? Imagine, so many things are made of plastic, everything that we touch. I mean, the basic supermarket cart, the handle. And let's talk about steel, for example, 72 hours on steel, all the railings in the world that we touch. Then we get on a bus and we're holding our hand up on the subway. Those are areas that the virus could sit for 72 hours. Cardboard, for example. Well, we are all getting packages from, Amazon or wherever it comes from. And 24 hours the virus could sit on the cardboard. So what's the best thing to do? How are we going to make sure that in case that box is contaminated, we are not going to bring that contamination into our house, in our family? One way to do it is just to leave it there for 24 hours. If that's not possible, you have to carefully put some gloves on, open that box, make sure that you don't touch the contents that is inside the box to the box, and take what's in it out. And I would even leave that on some place for 24 hours before I start touching it, if possible. These are precautions that some of us need to take more than others, especially people that are compromised, especially the elderly that are getting different things delivered to them. Those are the people that have to be very careful. We are walking around all types of surfaces, doorknobs, shopping carts, surfaces, elevators. You think about how little these viruses are. They're the size of 5 microns. A micron, just to give you an example, a human hair is approximately something like 80 or 90 microns on the average. And that is 5. These are just invisible viruses that they just replicate in such a unique fashion, and that's why it's such a hard time, people are having to fight it. So the other thing that I want to talk about is the clothing that people are wearing, and they're outside. And I want to talk about the size of basically these particles. And, what is it when you cough? What happens, and if you cough, for example, there are about 3,000 droplets that come out.
45 seconds left, Dr. Simon.
Okay, and then if you're sneezing, you got about 40,000. So if somebody sneezes on your jacket and you don't notice that, and you go home and you put that jacket and you put it on a surface, then you're taking that and contaminating your family. So you have to be very careful. We don't need to scare people, but just be aware of where you are, where you're going, and if you have been sitting in places. One of the main reasons why we are getting so many cases exponentially is because these droplets basically spread so fast, and they have a pretty long lifespan.
We're going to have to leave it there. Dr. Eddie Simon, thank you so much for the advice.